A song drifts across the mountain pass. The melody carries an ethereal quality, reminiscent of celestial choirs or the gentle hymns sung in ancient temples. Travelers pause, their ears catching notes of such pure beauty that tears spring unbidden to their eyes. The sound speaks of safety, of comfort, of home. Without conscious thought, feet begin to move, one step forward, then another. The mind grows quiet, overwhelmed by the sheer perfection of the music. This represents the moment before death arrives. The harpy stands as one of the most fundamentally deceptive predators in the entire catalog of monstrous creatures documented across the plains. Unlike dragons, whose terrible majesty inspires awe, even as it inspires fear, or mind flayers, whose alien intelligence marks them as obviously dangerous, the harpy presents a fatal contradiction that has claimed countless lives throughout the ages. The creature possesses a voice of transcendent, magical beauty capable of rivaling the greatest performers in any royal court. This gift of song, however, exists within a physical form of such profound ugliness and malice that even hardened adventurers have been known to recoil in visceral disgust upon first sight. This contradiction serves as the harpy's primary hunting strategy, and it operates with devastating efficiency. The distant sound of a harpy's song reaches the ears of unsuspecting travelers as something wonderful, something to be investigated and appreciated. The human mind, conditioned through culture and instinct to associate beauty with safety and goodness, makes a fatal assumption. The feet begin to move before the rational mind can intervene. By the time the source of the song becomes visible, the enchantment has already taken hold. The victim finds themselves standing before a nightmare made flesh, completely unable to resist as talons and beak begin their work. The harpy does not kill quickly. The creature does not view hunting as a simple means of acquiring sustenance. Harpies are sadists in the truest sense, deriving genuine pleasure from the suffering and terror of their victims. They use their captivating songs not merely to immobilize prey, but to orchestrate elaborate torments. A harpy will lead entranced victims on tortuous paths, guiding them through flames, over cliff edges, or into the waiting claws of the harpy's young. The creature watches with coal-black eyes as its toys stumble and fall, as they burn and bleed, all while remaining unable to break the enchantment that compels them forward. This examination of the harpy delves beyond the basic descriptions found in common bestiaries. The standard adventurer's guide provides minimal information. A creature with the torso of a woman and the body of a bird, capable of magical song, dangerous in groups. Such surface-level knowledge proves insufficient for true understanding. The harpy's origins reveal connections to ancient draconic evil and magical experimentation on human subjects. Their biology displays disturbing variations across different realms, suggesting either multiple evolutionary paths or deliberate magical modification. Their psychological profiles demonstrate not mere animal cunning, but genuine sadistic intelligence. Advanced variants have emerged, including mercenary archers and supernatural executors of cosmic justice. The harpy demands comprehensive study precisely because superficial knowledge breeds fatal mistakes. Adventurers who believe they understand the threat often find themselves the most vulnerable to it. The creature's song bypasses conventional defenses, striking directly at the mind's vulnerabilities. Standard combat tactics fail when party members suddenly abandon their positions and walk calmly toward the enemy. Even success in battle brings little satisfaction, for harpies rarely hunt alone, and the death of one creature merely alerts its nearby sisters to the presence of dangerous prey. The physical form of the harpy assaults both the eyes and the sensibilities of those unfortunate enough to witness it clearly. Descriptions from survivors and scholars consistently emphasize the profound wrongness of the creature's appearance, the way it violates fundamental expectations about how living things should be shaped and proportioned. The harpy exists as a chimeric fusion that should not be possible through any natural evolutionary process. The upper portion of the harpy presents a grotesque mockery of human femininity. The torso and head resemble those of an elderly human woman, but one whose features have been twisted by malice and cruelty into something barely recognizable as human. The face displays deeply lined skin, a hooked nose, and thin lips that pull back to reveal yellowed, pointed teeth suitable for tearing flesh. The eyes prove particularly disturbing to those who meet the creature's gaze. They appear as solid orbs of coal black, reflecting no light and offering no window into anything resembling a soul. These eyes track movement with predatory focus, calculating angles of attack and measuring the suffering potential of each victim. The hair of a harpy exists in a state of perpetual filth and neglect. Matted, tangled, and crusted with the dried blood of previous victims, it hangs in ropey strands around the creature's shoulders. Bits of bone, scraps of cloth, and other detritus from past kills become entangled in these masses, creating a grisly chronological record of the harpy's hunting success. The smell emanating from these creatures reportedly combines the stench of rotting meat, unwashed bodies, and the acrid odor of bird droppings into an olfactory assault that can trigger nausea in those who approach downwind. The arms and hands present another aspect of the harpy's disturbing anatomy. While generally proportioned like human limbs, the fingers extend into abnormally long, knotty digits that terminate in wickedly curved talons. These talons grow continuously throughout the harpy's life, and older specimens display claws of truly impressive and terrifying length. The creatures maintain these weapons with obsessive care, sharpening them on stone and bone until they can pierce leather armor and rend flesh with minimal effort. Interestingly, harpies wear no clothing whatsoever, apparently feeling no shame about their monstrous bodies and perhaps even taking pride in displaying their predatory features. The lower body presents significant variation depending on geographic location and planar origin, a discrepancy that has puzzled scholars for generations. The most commonly documented variant features the lower body, legs, and wings of a reptilian monster. These harpies display scales instead of feathers, powerful digitigrade legs ending in three-toed feet with prominent killing claws, and membranous wings that span impressive widths when fully extended. The reptilian strain tends to favor warm, dry environments and makes its lairs in desert canyons and sun-baked badlands. The avian variant, extensively documented in realms such as Faerun, presents a distinctly different lower anatomy. These creatures possess the body structure, legs, and wings of enormous vultures. Heavy flight feathers cover the wings, while shorter, downier plumage covers the lower torso and legs. The feet display the characteristic four-toed arrangement of avian predators, with 3 forward-facing toes and 1 opposing rear talon, all tipped with razor-sharp claws. This variant shows a strong preference for high-altitude environments, making lairs in deep caverns situated on mountain peaks or in the upper reaches of towering cliffs. They dive upon travelers from above, using gravity and their considerable momentum to add devastating force to their initial strike. Both variants demonstrate remarkable aerial agility despite their awkward appearance on the ground. The wings provide strong, sustained flight capabilities, allowing harpies to hover in place while singing their captivating songs or to execute complex aerial maneuvers during combat. They can fly backwards, sideways, and even briefly upside down when necessary. This three-dimensional mobility gives harpies an enormous tactical advantage over ground-bound opponents, allowing them to strike from unexpected angles and retreat to positions where conventional weapons cannot reach them. The question of why these anatomical variations exist troubles scholars who seek to understand the harpy's true nature. If harpies represent a naturally evolved species, one would expect consistency across populations with only minor regional variations. The dramatic difference between reptilian and avian lower bodies suggests either completely separate evolutionary paths that somehow converged on nearly identical upper bodies, or deliberate magical intervention. The latter explanation finds support in certain creation myths and historical accounts that paint a far darker picture of the harpy's origins. The most disturbing origin story for Harpies emerges from the ancient lore of the Diamond Throne, a realm where the terrible legacy of draconic rule continues to manifest in monstrous forms. According to these accounts, Harpies, along with other notorious creatures such as lamias, manticores, medusas, and nagas, did not evolve naturally. They were created deliberately, forged in workshops of agony and dark magic, as living weapons and instruments of terror. The dragons who once ruled the Diamond Throne were not the somewhat noble creatures of legend, capable of wisdom and mercy. These were tyrannical overlords who viewed all other intelligent species as property to be exploited without limit or conscience. When the dragons eventually fell from power, their corrupt bloodline continued through a race of demonic descendants known as the Dramoj. These creatures inherited their draconic ancestors' magical abilities and cruel dispositions, but they also possessed something the dragons perhaps lacked: a twisted creativity in the infliction of suffering. The Dramojay maintained vast populations of human slaves, treating them as livestock and raw materials for experimentation. In their foul laboratories, Dramoj mages worked to transform these humans into specialized monster servants, each designed for specific purposes. The process involved ritual magic of the darkest nature, permanently fusing human consciousness with animal bodies, while twisting the victim's mind and soul to make them suitable for their new, terrible roles. The humans selected for transformation into Harpies were subjected to agonizing arcane processes that stripped away their humanity piece by piece. The Dramoj did not simply reshape bodies, they fundamentally altered the essential nature of their subjects. The human capacity for empathy was replaced with sadistic glee at the suffering of others. The human voice, capable of complex language and emotional expression, was enhanced into a magical instrument of enslavement, while the subject's own free will was shattered. The human form was torn apart and rebuilt, fused with reptilian or avian components to create an aerial predator optimized for the hunting and torturing of the creature's former kindred. This transformation was permanent and heritable. The victims could not be restored to human form through any magic, no matter how powerful. When these transformed creatures reproduced, they gave birth not to human children, but to more Harpies, fully formed monsters from the moment of birth. The original victims of the Dramojay's experiments died centuries ago, but their corrupted bloodline continues, spreading across the plains as Harpy populations establish new territories and hunting grounds. This origin story, if true, transforms the Harpy from a simple monster to be fought and killed into something far more tragic and disturbing. Every Harpy represents the enduring legacy of ancient evil, a permanent testament to the depths of draconic cruelty. The creature's sadism and malice are not natural predatory instincts, but deliberately installed characteristics, engineered into the species' very essence by torturers who wanted their creations to take joy in causing pain. The Harpy's captivating song, which seems like such a strange and incongruous ability for a hideous monster to possess, makes perfect sense when understood as a tool specifically designed to lure and torment the creature's former species. This realization has profound implications for how one might approach encounters with Harpies. If these creatures are themselves victims of an ancient magical crime, transformed against their will from human slaves into monsters, does that complicate the moral calculus of killing them? Most scholars and adventurers argue it does not. Whatever humanity the first generation of Harpies might have retained has long since been bred out of the population through countless generations. Modern Harpies are born as monsters, develop as monsters, and die as monsters, with no human consciousness trapped within them seeking freedom. They are fully committed to their predatory lifestyle and derive genuine pleasure from their cruelty. Mercy extended to a Harpy is mercy wasted, likely to be rewarded with betrayal and death. However, the Dramoj origin also suggests possibilities that more conventionally natured Harpies do not. If the species was created through magical transformation rather than natural evolution or divine curse, might it be possible to reverse or counter that magic? Could a sufficiently skilled and determined mage develop a ritual to restore a Harpy to human form, or at least to remove the sadistic impulses engineered into them by the Dramoj? Such research would be extraordinarily dangerous, requiring close study of living harpy subjects who would certainly attempt to kill and devour their captors at every opportunity. Yet if successful, such magic might offer a path to redemption for a species that has known nothing but cruelty for millennia. The captivating song of the harpy represents perhaps the most insidious magical ability possessed by any common monster documented in the standard bestiaries. Unlike dragon breath or a Medusa's petrifying gaze, which announce themselves as obvious supernatural threats, the harpy's song operates through beauty and deception. The mind receives no warning that an attack is in progress until the enchantment has already taken hold. The mechanism of the captivating song operates on multiple levels simultaneously. On the physical level, the harpy produces sounds of genuine, transcendent beauty. This is not an illusion or trick of perception. The notes themselves possess aesthetic perfection that would be the envy of master bards across the realm. If one could somehow record a harpy's song and replay it without the accompanying enchantment, the recording would still be hauntingly beautiful, still capable of moving listeners to tears through purely artistic merit. The harpy's song represents what a divine being's music might sound like, perfect in pitch, timing, and emotional resonance. Layered onto this foundation of genuine beauty is the enchantment itself, a sonic, mind-affecting charm effect that radiates outward from the harpy in a massive area, typically extending 300 feet in all directions. Any creature with functioning hearing that enters this radius or begins its turn within it must immediately fight off the magical compulsion through sheer force of will. Those with weak mental defenses or insufficient preparation find themselves unable to resist. The enchantment bypasses conventional defenses entirely. Armor provides no protection, shields are useless, and physical barriers only help if they completely block sound transmission. Once captivated, the victim experiences a complete override of their survival instincts and conscious decision-making abilities. The rational mind, which might recognize the danger and command the body to flee or fight, finds itself locked away behind the overwhelming compulsion to approach the source of the song. The victim cannot choose to move in any other direction. They cannot draw weapons or activate magical items. They cannot call out to warn their companions. The body becomes an automaton, executing the simple program of walking directly toward the harpy while the conscious mind screams unheeded in the prison of the skull. The enchantment includes a particularly cruel refinement that demonstrates the sadistic intelligence behind its design. If the most direct path to the harpy leads through obviously hazardous terrain, through a roaring fire, across a frozen lake, or toward the edge of a cliff, the victim's survival instincts surge momentarily back to consciousness. This grants a brief opportunity to break the enchantment through sheer desperate willpower. However, this reprieve is temporary and uncertain. Many victims fail this secondary attempt to resist and continue marching into the flames or over the precipice. Their last conscious thought, a desperate attempt to stop feet that will not obey. Even those who succeed in breaking free at this moment may find themselves immediately recaptured if they remain within range of the ongoing song. For victims who follow a clear path directly to the harpy, no such reprieve occurs. They simply walk into the creature's waiting embrace, offering absolutely no resistance as talons close around their throats. The enchantment does not render victims completely unconscious or unaware. They remain awake and cognizant, forced to experience everything that happens next. They see the harpy's coal-black eyes studying them with cruel anticipation. They feel the first cuts as the creature begins its sport. They experience every moment of the torture that follows while remaining utterly incapable of defending themselves or even crying out for mercy. Harpies understand the psychological dimensions of this helplessness and exploit it ruthlessly. A harpy views captivated victims as toys, playthings to be used for entertainment until they break. The creature might march a captivated victim around in circles, laughing at their confused attempts to process what is happening. She might lead them to the edge of her lair and have them look down at the bones of previous victims. She might bring them before her young and allow the harpy chicks to practice their hunting techniques on an opponent who cannot fight back. Only when the Harpy has exhausted the entertainment value of a particular victim will she finally grant the mercy of death, consuming the body and adding the bones to the collection surrounding her lair. The continuous nature of the song creates additional tactical complications for groups attempting to fight Harpies. The enchantment lasts as long as the Harpy continues singing, plus one additional round afterward. A Harpy can sing indefinitely while still acting normally, attacking with claws, wielding weapons, or flying to new positions. This means that even if an archer manages to wound the creature, forcing it to focus on combat, previously captivated victims remain enchanted until 6 seconds after the song completely stops. In practice, Harpies rarely stop singing during combat, maintaining the enchantment on some victims while physically attacking others who have proven resistant to the song's effects. Breaking free from the captivation requires either successfully resisting the enchantment's mental compulsion, taking damage from an outside source that shocks the system enough to allow a new saving throw, or having the song disrupted by magical countersound. This last option provides the most reliable defense, assuming the presence of a skilled bard among the adventuring party. A bard's countersong ability operates by producing specific harmonic frequencies that interfere with the magical components of the Harpy's song without necessarily drowning out the physical sound. Captivated allies within range of the countersong gain additional opportunities to break free, their minds suddenly able to recognize the enchantment for what it is and fight against it. While the standard Harpy relies primarily on its enchanting song and crude melee attacks using bones as clubs, certain exceptional individuals demonstrate the capacity for far greater martial sophistication. These evolved variants present dramatically increased threats and often serve as the leaders of Harpy flocks, or operate as solitary apex predators, with territories spanning hundreds of square miles. The Harpy archer represents the most common and widely documented of these advanced variants. These creatures have made deliberate efforts to master the bow, training extensively in aerial archery until they achieve skill levels that rival elite human rangers. The development of a Harpy archer appears to require both natural aptitude and external opportunity. Harpies who encounter skilled archers among their victims sometimes take the time to examine the weapons and equipment, and particularly intelligent individuals recognize the tactical advantages that ranged weapons would provide to an aerial combatant. The training process for a Harpy archer remains largely mysterious, as few scholars have had opportunities to observe the creatures over extended periods without being killed and eaten. Some theorize that Harpy archers teach themselves through trial and error, stealing bows and arrows from victims and practicing in secret until competency develops. Others suggest that young Harpies with promising intelligence may be deliberately trained by older archer Harpies, creating lineages of specialized hunters that pass knowledge down through generations. A third, more disturbing possibility is that some Harpy archers receive formal training from humanoid instructors, corrupt mercenary leaders, or evil warlords who recognize the value of aerial archers and are willing to overlook the creature's monstrous nature in exchange for their military services. Regardless of how they acquire their skills, Harpy archers who survive long enough to achieve genuine mastery become extraordinarily dangerous opponents. These creatures combine the natural advantages of flight and the captivating song with the standoff capabilities of powerful bows. A Harpy archer can hover hundreds of feet above a caravan or patrol, safely beyond the range of most spells and ground-based weapons, and rain arrows down upon targets below. If return fire forces the archer to relocate, the creature's aerial mobility allows near-instant repositioning to a new firing position. This three-dimensional combat style proves nearly impossible for ground-based forces to counter effectively. The equipment loadout of a mature Harpy archer typically reflects significant accumulated wealth. Unlike standard Harpies who disdain manufactured items and prefer to remain naked, archers understand that survival in their chosen profession requires investment in quality gear. A well-established Harpy archer often wears enchanted armor, favoring studded leather that has been magically enhanced to provide superior protection without compromising aerial mobility. The typical enhancement level runs approximately +3, representing armor that can turn aside all but the most determined attacks while weighing little enough not to impair flight performance. The primary weapon of a Harpy archer is invariably a composite longbow, built with sufficient strength to be drawn by powerful Harpy muscles and deliver tremendous striking power. These bows typically receive enchantments as well, with frost being a particularly favored enhancement. A frost composite longbow delivers not only the physical trauma of a piercing arrow, but also a burst of magical cold that flash freezes tissue around the wound, causing additional damage and potentially disabling limbs. The arrows themselves are carefully selected and maintained, with quivers containing specialized ammunition, including cold iron arrows for use against fey creatures, silvered arrows for lycanthropes, and sometimes adamantine arrows for opponents wearing heavy armor. Beyond weapons and armor, Harpy archers accumulate impressive collections of magical accessories. Bracers of archery are nearly universal among these creatures, as the enchantment provides measurable improvements in accuracy and damage that justify the significant cost. Rings of protection add additional defensive capabilities, surrounding the wearer with invisible shields that turn aside attacks. Cloaks of resistance bolster the Harpy's natural resilience against hostile magic, granting enhanced chances to resist spells and supernatural abilities. Some particularly wealthy specimens even possess amulets of natural armor or boots that improve flying speed. The economic implications of a Harpy archer's equipment collection are significant. The total value of a fully equipped specimen's gear often exceeds 20,000 gold pieces, representing tremendous accumulated wealth. Harpy archers acquire this money through two primary means: mercenary work and organized banditry. As mercenaries, Harpy archers sell their services to the highest bidder, serving in the armies of evil warlords and corrupt kingdoms. Their ability to provide aerial reconnaissance, assassinate enemy leaders from impossible angles, and break enemy formations with terror-inducing dive attacks makes them valuable assets worth premium rates. When not employed in military campaigns, Harpy archers often operate as sophisticated highway robbers, claiming specific trade routes as their territories. They scout caravans from high altitude, assessing the value of goods and the strength of defensive forces. When a sufficiently valuable target appears, the Harpy descends to issue an ultimatum: pay a substantial protection fee or face attack. Merchants understand that fighting a flying opponent who can strike with lethal precision from beyond return fire range represents a losing proposition, and most choose to pay the demanded tribute. Over time, a single Harpy archer operating a profitable trade route can accumulate extraordinary wealth, which is then reinvested into ever more powerful equipment, creating a dangerous positive feedback loop of increasing lethality. The presence of Harpy archers in an area creates cascading economic and social effects. Trade routes become dangerous and expensive to operate, driving up prices for goods in isolated communities. Merchants must hire expensive aerial cavalry escorts or powerful wizards capable of flight and long-range attack spells. Some regions resort to negotiating formal treaties with established Harpy archers, essentially paying systematic bribes in exchange for guaranteed safe passage. These arrangements prove distasteful to lawful societies, but often represent the most economically viable solution, particularly in mountainous regions where the terrain itself provides countless ambush points and hiding places for aerial predators. Combat against a Harpy archer requires specialized tactics and capabilities. Ground-bound warriors prove almost useless, as the archer simply maintains altitude beyond their reach while continuing to fire. Wizards with flight spells can engage directly, but they must be prepared for a protracted aerial dogfight against an opponent with superior natural flight capabilities and extensive combat experience. The most reliable counter involves other archers, preferably mounted on flying beasts or positioned at high altitude before the Harpy arrives. Even then, the Harpy's enchanted equipment often provides enough defensive capability to survive the initial exchange and retreat to fight another day. Truly eliminating an established Harpy archer from a territory requires sustained effort, multiple coordinated attacks, and acceptance of potentially significant casualties among one's own forces. The Furies of Ravenloft represent perhaps the most disturbing evolution of the Harpy concept, creatures that transcend simple predation to serve a dark, spiritual purpose within the Nightmare realm. These beings, three malicious sisters named Alecto, Tisiphone, and Megarea, bear resemblance to standard harpies but differ in fundamental ways that speak to their unique origins and terrible mission. The physical appearance of a fury immediately distinguishes it from common harpies. Where standard harpies present as grotesquely ugly, furies possess a dark, terrible beauty. Their skin displays an ink-black coloration that seems to absorb rather than reflect light, creating an unsettling visual effect where the creatures appear as animate shadows given form. Their hair shares this absolute blackness, flowing in thick waves rather than the matted, filthy tangles characteristic of standard harpies. The eyes glow with a dusky, feral red light, marking the furies as supernatural entities rather than merely monstrous animals. The lower body of a fury resembles that of a vulture, maintaining the avian connection seen in Farunian harpy variants. However, the wings present a crucial difference. Instead of bird wings covered in feathers, furies possess black, leathery bat wings that spread from their shoulders in a distinctly demonic configuration. This anatomical choice creates a visual connection to devils and demons, reinforcing the fury's nature as supernatural punishers rather than natural predators. The needle-like teeth and sharp talons complete the predatory appearance, though these weapons see less use than one might expect given the fury's preferred methodologies. The mission of the furies differs fundamentally from the simple sadistic hunting practiced by standard harpies. While common harpies kill and eat whatever victims their songs can capture, furies concern themselves specifically with questions of redemption and corruption. They seek out individuals who stand at moral crossroads, people who have committed evil acts but retain some capacity for redemption and return to virtue. These potential redeemers represent the furies' primary targets, and the creatures dedicate themselves to ensuring that redemption never occurs. The furies employ sophisticated scrying magic to identify and study their targets. They observe from afar, learning the details of a victim's past crimes, current circumstances, relationships, fears, and desires. This intelligence-gathering phase may continue for weeks or months as the furies compile comprehensive psychological profiles. When they finally approach, they arrive armed with knowledge that allows them to present themselves as allies, confidants, or even voices of conscience. The supernatural ability to cast alter self at will enables furies to take the form of wizened human crones, appearing as wise women or fortune-tellers who claim to offer guidance. The corruption process proceeds gradually, with the furies using their detailed knowledge to present temptations perfectly calibrated to exploit their victims' specific vulnerabilities. A warrior seeking to atone for past massacres might be shown how his newfound mercy allows enemies to escape and harm innocents. A thief trying to live honestly might be reminded of the poverty and suffering their family endures without the income from crime. The fury whispers, suggests, and presents opportunities, always pushing the victim toward increasingly serious transgressions. Each step seems reasonable, justified, necessary. The victim tells themselves they will commit just this one more evil act, just this once, and then return to the path of redemption. But the furies ensure there is always one more act, one more compromise, one more descent. Those who possess sufficient moral fortitude to recognize the manipulation and reject the furies' temptations discover that these creatures are not merely tempters, but also executors of violent punishment. Resistance triggers aggressive hostility, and the furies shift from subtle corruption to direct assault. At this stage, the creatures demonstrate their full supernatural capabilities, revealing themselves as far more dangerous than standard harpies in direct combat. Critically, furies do not employ the captivating song that defines standard harpy combat tactics. This absence of the signature ability distinguishes them as fundamentally different creatures, rather than merely variant harpies. Instead, furies possess a breath weapon, a cloud of putrid, stinking air that spreads in a cone before them. Victims caught within this noxious cloud find themselves choking and gagging, unable to breathe or act normally. The cloud persists for several rounds, creating a zone that prevents effective combat or spellcasting. This ability allows a Fury to disable multiple opponents simultaneously, rendering bodyguards and protectors helpless while the creature pursues its primary target. In melee combat, Furies demonstrate a preference for a specific weapon, the Scourge, a multi-tailed whip designed to inflict maximum pain while keeping victims alive and suffering. Each Fury carries a heavily enchanted Scourge, typically enhanced to approximately +3 equivalent power, marking them as weapons of significant magical potency. The Furies wield these weapons with expert precision, laying open flesh in controlled patterns that maximize agony without delivering immediately fatal wounds. The psychological impact of being flogged by a supernatural entity while choking on poisonous air proves overwhelming for most victims, breaking resistance and reducing even hardened warriors to begging broken things. The true supernatural nature of the Furies reveals itself most clearly in their deaths. When a Fury is finally slain, the body does not remain as a physical corpse. Instead, it dissipates into a fetid black cloud that quickly disperses, leaving behind only the creature's enchanted Scourge. This dissolution suggests that Furies do not truly possess physical bodies in the conventional sense, but rather manifest as spiritual entities temporarily wearing material forms. The question of whether destroying a Fury's manifestation represents a permanent death or merely a temporary banishment remains unresolved in scholarly literature. The relationship between the three known Furies Electo, Tisiphone, and Megarea raises additional questions. The fact that exactly 3 exist and they identify as sisters suggests either a deliberately limited creation or some spiritual law that governs their manifestation. Whether additional Furies could be created, either through reproduction or through some ritual process, remains unknown. Some scholars speculate that the 3 represent unique entities, singular beings that embody specific aspects of supernatural punishment and moral corruption. Others theorize that Fury represents more of a title or role that could potentially be assumed by other entities under the right circumstances. The implications of the Furies' existence and mission create profound unease among those who learn of them. These creatures do not simply punish evil or destroy the irredeemable. Instead, they actively work to prevent redemption, to drag back toward damnation those who seek to escape it. This suggests a cosmology where forces exist specifically to ensure that evil, once committed, permanently stains the soul beyond any possibility of cleansing. The Furies represent a dark theological position, that redemption is an illusion, that those who have fallen cannot truly rise again, and that any attempt to do so must be crushed. For adventurers operating in Ravenloft, the existence of the Furies creates a persistent, psychological threat that extends beyond simple combat danger. Any party member with a dark past must wonder whether their attempts at redemption have drawn these creatures' attention. Every stranger offering advice might be a Fury in disguise. Every temptation to solve a problem through violence or deceit might be a carefully orchestrated test. The Furies transform moral struggle from an internal, personal challenge into an external conflict against enemies who possess supernatural knowledge and power dedicated specifically to ensuring failure. In this way, they represent perhaps the most psychologically sophisticated of all Harpy variants, creatures whose greatest weapon is not song or claw, but the weaponization of guilt and shame against those who retain enough conscience to feel them. The Harpy occupies a unique position in the catalog of monsters that adventurers must prepare to face. Unlike dragons or liches, whose power levels clearly mark them as extraordinary threats requiring extensive preparation and powerful characters, Harpies appear at first assessment as relatively minor dangers. The standard Harpy's physical statistics place it well within the capabilities of even relatively inexperienced adventuring parties to defeat in straightforward combat. This apparent weakness, however, represents one of the creature's greatest dangers, for it encourages underestimation. The true threat of the Harpy lies in the juxtaposition of its seemingly modest combat abilities with its extraordinarily powerful crowd control effect. The captivating song does not care about the level of its victims, does not scale down against less experienced targets or scale up against veterans. A first-level Wanderer and a 20th level Archmage face fundamentally similar challenges when resisting the enchantment, as the effect targets mental defenses that do not necessarily improve in proportion to overall power growth. Parties that have successfully defeated far more physically impressive monsters can find themselves completely dismantled by a single Harpies song if they lack the specific defenses or tactical approaches necessary to counter it. This characteristic makes Harpies particularly valuable as encounters in campaign design. They teach players and characters alike that direct combat power represents only one dimension of threat assessment. The Harpy forces tactical thinking, requiring parties to develop layered defensive strategies rather than relying solely on overwhelming offense. Characters learn to value abilities like silence spells, which shut down the captivating song entirely, or freedom of movement effects, which prevent the compelled movement even if the enchantment itself succeeds. Bards discover the situational importance of their countersong ability, often relegated to secondary utility in favor of more directly powerful bardic music, but absolutely crucial when facing sonic enchantment effects. The psychological impact of encountering Harpies extends beyond the immediate combat encounter. Survivors of Harpy attacks often develop lasting trauma, not from physical wounds but from the memory of having their will stolen, their body controlled, their autonomy violated in the most fundamental way. This trauma manifests as paranoia about enchantment magic in general, with victims becoming obsessively focused on acquiring and maintaining protections against mind-affecting effects. Some survivors develop such severe anxiety that they refuse to travel through any terrain where Harpies might lair, effectively allowing the creatures to claim vast territories through reputation alone rather than through actual territorial enforcement. The ecological impact of Harpy populations deserves consideration as well. A breeding population of Harpies in mountainous terrain can effectively depopulate entire valleys by making travel impossibly dangerous. Trade routes close, small settlements are abandoned as residents flee to larger communities with stronger defenses, and the region becomes economically isolated. The Harpies themselves often face no effective opposition from local populations,